Hello friends, this is Dr. Amarjit Kaur. We are going to talk about organizational barriers and personal barriers in the next few minutes. At the end, we will talk about few tips how to overcome these barriers. So this is the agenda for next few minutes. So let's talk about organizational barriers. Friends, as you know, barriers are those situations which becomes hurdle, which deteriorates the quality of communication, which undermines the quality of message, thus leading to ineffective communication, right? So we are going to talk about those barriers which are known as organizational barriers. So organizational barriers has many parts in it, many variables in it. The first one is the policy of the organization. So organizational policy is one of the important organizational barrier. How? Let's say there are many businesses who have a policy that a particular report should be given in this particular order. There is a performa which is mentioned having 20 pages, 18 pages, anything, and has many heads and subheads. That particular policy is basically to gather any information on it could be on the progress of the project, it could be the progress with the follow-up action, progress with the ongoing customer care program, anything. So that particular policy that the report should be submitted in this format becomes a barrier for times. You would be wondering how. I will give you an example. If I am not very good in written communication and I am very good in my task, in my whatever the activity I handle. So when it comes to written communication, I am not very good in it. So I really hate to write so long reports. The moment I'm supposed to be submitting that report in those 20 pages, I will become kind of resistance to not to submit the report, and that particular policy is simply causing it. Had it been a policy that you can communicate the report in whichever way you want, maybe I like pictures to be used in the report, maybe I simply like to share a PowerPoint presentation for my report, or simply maybe a phone call or email only, right? So an email is enough for me to give an update on the ongoing project, but the policy says you have to submit, you have to fill that report on the progress of the report, and that the policy itself becomes a barrier, right? This is a very common barrier amongst the organizations, because there are many organizations who have such a lengthy procedure for applying leaves, for submitting reports, for submitting complaints, etc., etc. This also happen. For example, if there's a case of any indiscipline or a case of harassment, sexual harassment at a workplace, policy says the complainant need to submit the report in writing, putting the name of the person and disclosing her name as well, narrating the whole incidents in the report. Now this may become a barrier. If I am victim, I may not like to put everything so much in detail on black and on a piece of paper in black and white. So in both the examples which I took consciously, I am trying to help you understand that the organization policy in itself can become a barrier for times, right? Then there are rules and regulations which become barrier. So rules and regulation that this particular report needed to come by XYZ person or the department. Regulation says, so you are good in communication, policy report you have no problem with, but the rule says you cannot submit the report directly to the managing director. You are, let's say, head of the sales, you have to go through XYZ person. Now You do not want whatever the findings of your report or whatever your take is to be known to anyone else. Then the MD, you want to discuss the straightway with the managing director. So this rule that the report should come from this route, this particular hierarchy, is just a rule, right? But this may stop somebody to report, somebody to furnish the information, may discourage somebody because he or she may not have a good rapport with the person who is in between, with the department which is in between, right? And this is a reality. You just talk to your parents, family, friends, whosoever is working. They actually come across this situation very often. I have seen many people that because of this rule, we can't say. There's a rule that you cannot, only females can communicate about particular indiscipline act or harassment, etc., etc. If there's a rule, so which as per law is not there at all, right? That particular rule becomes a barrier in the in the communication and is known as organizational barrier, because this barrier is the outcome of the organizational policy or rule or regulation. Okay. Then the third example is status relation. The status relation also is for times it proves as a barrier. Status relationship means the hierarchy. So if I am talking to my immediate boss, I would be comfortable. But if I have to report to super senior boss because of something, I may not be comfortable. I may be shaky in my language. I may not be able to express completely whatever is there in my mind. The status actually brings communication to certain level, then lesser than what is required. So had it been a flat organization, had there been not a very strong organizational chart, had there been a freedom to express anything to anybody, right? So status is not related to the expression or to the ideas or to the meeting. So in meetings, maybe sometimes people are discouraged to give any suggestion because those people are from a junior category. They are from a at the bottom of the hierarchy level. So those people may actually not be able to share whatever they have in their mind, simply because the culture of the organization is that there is a relation to the status, that only this particular position guy will raise this issue or can raise this issue, this kind of issue, right? So this is to do with the status, that who is the production head. Only that guy can talk about the problem in the shifts, can talk about the change in the shift timings, can talk about the electricity issues, breakdown issue. If this is established that only the production head would be reporting all this, then you may not be able, if you are at the top of the organization, you may not be able to get the information, simply because the fault in that particular case was of the production head, and he was the guy who was responsible to communicate as per the policy, and he preferred not to talk about it because of saving his own skin, right? So somebody who would just try to save his skin and actually take disadvantage or of the situation of this particular hierarchy situation, which is also known as status relation. Then we have complexity in the organization. There are many organizations which are too complex. You do not know who is reporting to whom, right? There's no flatness, but the hierarchy is so difficult. There are verticals, horizontal, there's a matrix for kind of organization structure, but anybody can be reporting to anyone, and because of that particular situation, the important message whichever is required is missed to be shared or reported. And that is very common, that the complexity of the organization itself actually becomes a barrier in the communication. you know. So this is that I am responsible or you are responsible, he is responsible or she is responsible. If that is not clear, who is reporting to whom is not clear, somebody is reporting to 10 people, somebody is reporting to 5 people, right? So this particular piece of information is to go to 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 or number 5 is not clear, because it's such a complex organization. Sometimes the important information may be missed to be shared with the correct person, with the concerned person, right? So information is sent but is given to somebody who is not of concern, who is that information is not relevant to him or her, but it has gone to somebody. You think I have given the information, but you shared it with the wrong person, with the person who is not concerned about it, right? Simply because the person who is giving the information, sender here, has no clue to whom to share the information with. This happens many a times in educational institutions. People may put up a request to issue a no objection certificate to training and placement section. Training and placement section says no, that NOC should be given to a student from the head of the department or vice versa, right? The policy could be that no objection certificate should be given by the department concerned. If a student is from management, the head of the management. If the student is from engineering department, head of the engineering department should be issuing the NOC. But the student is not sure, he has not read the guidelines, he has not read the placement brochure, and he simply goes to one person. This is not a very complex example, but this is how. So I am trying to help you understand with this small example that this is how the things are complex, and they can distort the message. They can actually bring the quality of the message to a very distorted level, a low level, so causing ineffective communication. Now we shall talk about the fourth type of barriers, which are known as personal barriers. So the barriers which are known as personal barriers can be divided into two parts: barriers in superiors and barriers in juniors or subordinates, right? So we will take them now one by one. So barriers in superiors, the first one is attitude of superior. We many a times keep on hearing these stories that I can't talk to my boss. This is a reality, friends. Many a times people will talk, your friends will talk, your parents will talk and tell you that his or her boss carries an attitude and he doesn't listen, she doesn't listen, and that happens. This is a reality. No two humans are same. We do not have all the people very nice and good listeners, right? So the attitude of superior is this, that whenever any junior or the subordinate express or give some suggestion or idea, it is simply being snubbed, as if I am the only person who knows everything. And many people have this kind of attitude, this kind of superiority. Here I am saying that because we are talking with the reference to business communication, the superiors, to whom subordinates are reporting, means the boss, right? Your immediate boss, he or she has attitude of superiority, he has an attitude of discouraging, he or she has an attitude of not listening, not giving any damn to the person, or inattentive or not appreciative of the idea. Any kind of attitude can actually discourage the person who is your junior, who is your subordinate. It will discourage him or her to communicate effectively, right? He or she will actually resist to communicate anything, or may restrict himself to the most essential things. That's it. They may not like to open up more than what is required for show. The second barrier, barrier because of the superiors is here, the fear of challenge of authority. So superior may have fear in his or her mind that the person is challenging my authority, right? सो आप कैसे कह सकते हैं मैं डिसाइड करूंगा, आप कैसे कह सकती हैं मैं डिसाइड करूंगी, like that. So that there's a fear that the person who is superior, he feels his authority has been challenged. If some suggestion has been given, or if I've been told that, sir, this would have been better, or this is how we can do it better. If I try to tell this, it's, and the superior is having a barrier in his mind that he or she takes it as a challenge to his authority, that becomes a barrier to the communication, right? So this is a barrier to the business communication. Then the next barrier, which is a personal barrier of superior, that superior means the senior here, right? They have lack of time, and because of this lack of time, the message is not communicated exactly what was supposed to be in your mind, right? You could not complete your sentence, and the senior leaves the meeting. You could not even say you could not share the complete report. You could not present the complete case. You could not, talk about the complete situation you were handling about, and the person had to leave, right? So the person, the superior has left because, or could not hear you, could not read your report, could not see your expression because there was lack of time. And that lack of time at the end of superior or the senior actually causes or becomes a barrier in communication, in effective communication. Okay. Then lack of awareness. For times the senior may not aware of the issues and the problems the juniors are facing, right? It's not essential, especially when the senior has not evolved from the junior level. If the person has become senior or superior straightway without handling the positions which are there at the junior level, those people really face this problem because they are not aware of the real issues at the ground level. So this lack of awareness of the real situation at the ground, or lack of awareness of the problems the team is facing at this point of time, and the person would actually not be able to get what is communicated by the juniors. So your knowledge level as a senior or superior, your awareness level actually can be an important determinant factor for the effective communication. Now these barriers could be, these personal barriers could be at the end of subordinates as well. What could this be? The subordinates are unwilling to communicate, right? I think मुझे नहीं बात करनी है, मुझे कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, अपने आप देखेंगे, अपने आप जो होगा, ये दिस इज अ वेरी कॉमन स्टेटमेंट वी शेयर. मैं क्यों बताऊं, मुझे क्या लेना देना है, मेरे को क्या है, अपने आप देखेंगे. I am not answerable, I am working at some position where I am not answerable, so I am not willing to communicate. So subordinate could be simply not willing. There could be couple of reasons for it, but the person is unwilling to communicate, unwilling to share the problem, unwilling to share the progress, unwilling to share the concern, etc., etc. Then certainly this becomes a barrier in business communication. Then lack of proper incentives. If I do not if I do not get any acknowledgement even to the idea I share in a meeting, I may be discouraged, so you cannot actually sustain your interest of sharing the ideas, new thoughts, new ideas for any problem, any new solution, if I do not get incentive. And here doesn't mean the money. Incentives are not always money, right? Non-monetary incentives are more effective. Simply an acknowledgement by your senior that yes, you are heard, your thought is good, your idea was good, your attempt was good. My idea may not be good, but I tried. I took interest and I tried and I brought something on the table. That should be appreciated, right? That must be appreciated. If it is not, then that discourages the presenter, that discourages the junior, the senior, right? So I do not, as a junior, I have no incentive, because there is no need for me to share my. If I do not share, there is no penalty, right? If I do not talk, there is no penalty. So it means I do not have an incentive to talk or to share or to express. So that's how it becomes barrier. Okay. So after this, the last thing I want to talk about is that how to overcome these barriers. So certainly both sender and receivers can do something to minimize the effect of barriers, to bring down the barriers, hurdles. First of all, the sender should be very clear about the message. What do I want to say? Right? That's very important. Sender should be clear in his or her mind that this is exactly what needed to be communicated. So if the sender is clear, certainly it will take care of the problem of ineffective communication. Then the sender should be very, very precise in whatever the point he or she is making. Then sender should be actually not using verbose. He should not be verbose. What does it mean? Verbose are those people who use heavy words. They use so many words, verbs. So people who are actually they use heavy language, they use technical language, they use legal language, they just stick to words only. They ignore body language, they ignore what they are nodding, what they are saying, what their eyes is saying. So that becomes a limitation. So sender should not be verbose, right? The sender should use language which is understandable by the receiver to the receiver. So as we discussed in semantic barrier, that language is important. So we must not use. Let's say have you ever seen a politician addressing a particular constituency using language, then local language? His or her accent would be different, could be different, but he or she would prefer to use the local language. This is a very common practice amongst political parties. Their leaders, whenever they go for public speaking, their public address, they prefer to use local language. If not completely, you will certainly see they are using few words which are very common in that area, in that geographical area. And that is to overcome the barrier. I am using a language which is understandable by the people there, by the receiver. So that becomes, that can take care of the barrier. Then if it is a written message, we should be actually trying to write the message if possible, if required. Because written message has very clear meaning. Your body language doesn't come. Your body language doesn't become a barrier. You are not judged for in which state, in which mood you were when you were writing. Your message would be taken as it is. And especially if we have a structured format, though it becomes a limitation for times, it becomes a barrier for times. But if our format if our performance are simple, straight, then the written communication is more effective, and sender would be communicating exactly what he or she has in mind. There is a very thin line between these things. The same written communication can become a barrier, right? But if the performer is simple, straight, then it becomes effective in the communication. The last point a sender should take care of is the request of feedback to ensure that the receipt of the message is same as whatever I wanted to communicate. Feedback is a very important part of the communication. Seeking feedback on whatever you communicate. Just pick up a phone and ask, आपको बात समझ आ गई? Yes sir. Is there anything I can explain? Is there any query I can answer to? So those questions, those closing lines in the communication, in the conversation or in the written communication makes a very important point or progress towards effective communication. So it's a very important step towards effective communication. I always prefer to seek feedback after every meeting, after every personal meeting, public gathering, public communication. So if I say, do you have any question even after this talk, it means I am seeking the feedback, right? To understand, did you gather what I want to communicate? Now talking about, from the receiver's perspective, the receiver should be very attentive. Only then he would be able to gather what has been said. He should concentrate on the message, not on the other thing or not the surroundings. The receiver should ask for the clarification whenever required, right? And the receiver should listen objectively. He should not bring any subjectivity in the conversation. The receiver should listen to the body language as well and should make notes if required, right? So that's how receiver and sender, they both have a role to play in to overcome these barriers. This is the crux of the discussion I am saying. It's not only in the hand of sender to which can help overcome barriers, or which can make the effective communication, and not only in the hand of receiver as well. So both the parties, sender and receiver, play an important role. They need to take care of few things which we discussed, that how to overcome these barriers. So being aware of barriers and doing certain steps, taking some step to overcome these barriers really helps in effective communication. So with this, I would like to stop here. Thank you very much, friends.